Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to our weekly podcast, Educate Us. With us today is psychologist Anne Riesling, who's here to talk about mnemonics and how they help us with learning. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Riesling.
Please call me Anne, and thank you for having me.
And could you just briefly explain to our listeners what a mnemonic is?
Yes, of course. Well, the word mnemonic comes from the Greek word for memory. So a mnemonic is anything that helps our own memory. We often use them to remember something that's hard to remember, but useful for us to know. We commonly use phrases or rhymes in mathematics so that we can remember how to do things with numbers.
There's one that I remember from grade school. 8 times 8 fell on the floor, pick it up, and it's 64.
Ah, that's very smart. You see how helpful that is? You've remembered that saying for years. But could you have remembered the answer without it? Possibly not, because calculating numbers is not very interesting. But the cute little phrase, well, we tend to remember these things. Sort of like a lyric to a pop song that stays in your head.
There was another one I used to use, Holmes. Each letter stands for one of the Great Lakes in the United States. Lake Huron, Lake Ontario, Lake Michigan, Lake Erie, and Lake Superior. I would never remember that otherwise.
Well, there are many common phrases that are useful, and I think it's valuable for students to learn as many of them as they come across. Apart from mnemonics, where the first letter of the word stands for something, we can also learn rhyme mnemonics. How can we remember how to spell the word receive, for example? There's an I and an E in the word. Does the I come first, or is it the E that comes first?
Oh, that's an easy one. The mnemonic is I before E except after C.
Or when sounding like A in neighbor and way.
Oh, yes, oops, I forgot the rest of it.
That's okay. Yes, even with mnemonics, we still have to remember them correctly. But even if we don't always know them perfectly, they are useful because they can help us remember the information. In addition, I believe it's important for educators to encourage students to come up with mnemonics on their own, since what one student remembers easily might not be easy for another.
How would they do that?
Well, another type of mnemonic is a connection mnemonic, which is making connections between words to help us remember their meanings. Take latitude and longitude, for example. Lines of latitude on the Earth are parallel with the equator, and lines of longitude go from north to south. You could say longitude makes you think of things that are tall and long, so that helps me remember which is which.
Ah, that's very clever.
Having a variety of mnemonics can be helpful for students to try so that they can see for themselves what works best. To conclude, remembering things for study purposes is important, but it's also a good way for us to exercise our minds. The more we use our memory, the better it works.
Great. Well, I'm sure you've provided some information today that our listeners will definitely remember. Thank you.